I think March Madness is captivating for what I call the ABCD reasons. A being the affinity people have for their alma maters, the schools that they played for and their interest in following them during this tournament. B stands for the brackets, where the matchups are announced and developed, and then people compete with each other to see how many winners you can correctly choose. C has to do with the competitive format, one game and you're out. So it's a very harsh format in its way, but a very exciting one. C also stands for calendar. The tournament's held in the month of March, which is a sort of a dead time frame in the U.S. sports calendar. And then C also stands for Cinderella teams, meaning a small school could beat a big school. And people like to see those giant killing games. And then finally D, college sports really are different from, say, pro sports. College basketball has a different feel than an NBA game, and that's very attractive to a lot of fans. Well, the competitive format of the NCAA tournament is tried and true. 68 teams are selected. 32 of those are what are called automatic qualifiers, meaning that they won their conference championship, so they automatically qualify. The other 36 are selected as at-large teams. The 68 go into a bracket that's divided up into 4 regions of the country, so roughly 16, 16, 16, and 16. And they're laid out on a grid that's known as a bracket, and it's when that is announced, it's a big day in the U.S. We've had presidents of the United States filling out brackets, meaning they're predicting who's going to win which game, and then which teams are ultimately going to be in the Final Four, and then the national championship game, and then finally the winner. So it's kind of a ritual in the month of March in the U.S. For people to get into the bracketology game. All of these terms here, and see how they do in this, process of selection. But it's very, very exciting, and I think the bracket piece of this has contributed to the event's massive appeal. Well, there is. College sports at some levels is a big business, in particular for 2 sports that generate significant revenue, college football and men's basketball. The rest of the sports maybe make some money, but none of them would turn a profit. So it's kind of a interesting financial model. You have these 2 sports driving the revenues and in effect paying for every other sport, which don't make enough money to support themselves. The athletes, while they don't get paid salaries and don't get taxed as employees, do get scholarships to play sports, which means that their room and board, their tuition and fees, their housing expenses, their academic advising, medical costs are all paid for by the universities, and importantly, they graduate without any debt. So while they don't get paid salaries per se, there are some real benefits that go back to student athletes, and in a recent federal case, it was determined that that was sufficient. This scholarship plus an incremental payment called cost of attendance was enough to keep the NCAA in compliance with the antitrust laws. So for now, that's basically the law of the land in the U.S. But there has been a vigorous debate in the U.S. about whether more should be done for student athletes, and the NCAA is trying to get at that through an examination of the range of benefits, financial and otherwise, that student athletes are receiving. As a leader, I draw probably at least in part from my training as a lawyer. I went to law school at UCLA. I practiced on Wall Street for a couple of years, and my first job in sports was as a staff attorney for the National Basketball Association. I was hired by Gary Bettman, now the commissioner of the National Hockey League, and I worked for David Stern for many years, and David had many lawyers on the staff at the NBA, and so I bring into my work kind of a mindset of thoroughness. I ask a lot of questions. I want to make sure I understand an issue and the background of the issue and maybe some precedent for how that issue was addressed before I make a decision. I'm a subscriber to sort of consensus leadership, making sure I have the right people involved in a decision. And in general, I would say my leadership style has 5 Ds. My 5 Ds of leadership are or what leaders I think do every day, or some combination. The first D is do. Leaders have to do. The second is decide. Leaders have to make decisions. The third is sometimes leaders have to delay action. Sometimes the best decision is not to make a decision, to wait it out and see whether circumstances change. The fourth D is delegation. Leaders can't do it all. You have to rely on the people working for you to carry out certain tasks, and that's something that not all leaders do intuitively. They have to learn how to delegate. And then finally, what I call the fifth D is dividing up the leadership responsibilities, and that may mean bringing in other stakeholders to help with the leadership. And in college sports, that's important because there are so many constituencies that have to be brought in. I have to deal with presidents of universities, athletics directors. Sometimes I have to deal with coaches directly. I have to deal with student athletes in some form. So I have to figure out every day which of those groups, in addition to myself or my staff, I have to involve. So those are my 5 Ds of leadership.